Hello, Internet. Welcome back to our Experimental Cataclysm series. If you don't know, this is the show where we talk about updates that have come to the game of Cataclysm, the experimental version, over the last couple of weeks. There's, not a lot of super big stuff that happened this week, but there are a lot of little things that I think are interesting, so we're going to be talking about them as we go. First, we have from Korg. We talked about this, I believe, last time when we discussed the current state of nested containers. There was an issue where cans were still being spawned as open, specifically things like dog food, cat food. A lot of alcohol was being spawned in aluminum cans. In fact, that says right here, aluminum cans of beer and small tins of cat food, for instance. And Korg decided to take a look at that and fix that. So it looked like it was a pretty straightforward fix. And I've not really been able to play with this yet, but I imagine this fixed a lot of those issues. And great to see that because, again, people ask me pretty much constantly if nested containers are safe to play, and anything I can say to get them to play that, the current version so we can get more bug reporters, that kind of stuff is good. So, yeah, I wanted to mention that. Next, from Fallout 48, we have some new medical professions and a heroin addict. And I think that that's kind of interesting because the heroin addict, technically the heroin addict counts as a profession because that's what we call our kind of classes that exist in Cataclysm. Probably ought to be a better name for that, but I don't I don't have any ideas. But it adds several professions that are focused around medical treatment. So we have the heroin addict, as mentioned. This is the thing about the heroin addict, it made me think, isn't like the tweaker kind of an catch-all for all the addictions? Is there a specific addiction that's attached to? I never have played as a tweaker in all the time I've been playing. But anyway, we have a heroin addict, which presumably is an opiate addiction specifically. And in fact, we also have a paramedic, an EMT, a combat medic added as well. And these are much more medical-focused professions. Paramedic is just a medical resident with better equipment and light car skills. Good profession for keeping your friends alive a little bit longer. First aid and car skills for the EMT starts with an ambulance, which I think is interesting. Someone was asking on Discord recently about American EMTs and whether or not they're actually ambulance drivers or if that is a separate profession. I don't know if that was Fallout 48. I don't think that was who was talking about it. But it's interesting that this came up nonetheless. And then we have a combat medic, which is a slightly military-trained medical professional. Thought this was pretty cool. Anything that adds new professions or scenarios, that kind of stuff to the game, really improves the replayability, and I really respect that sort of thing. Problem with professions is that we already have quite a lot, and it's pretty hard to sift through the list. It's always hard for me to pick new ones because it's like you got to go through like 200 or whatever professions, and it's a bit tedious. I don't know of any way to fix that, but the actual diversity is a good thing here. It's just not particularly organized. So, always nice to see new professions come to the game, and especially medical-based ones, because I don't think there were many that were like normal people stuff. I think we had like doctor-style things, but we didn't have any that were like everyday people. Like a paramedic in America, or rather an EMT, is not really someone that's like super edified in society. They're usually pretty undervalued, and they don't get the respect they deserve. So I thought it was kind of cool to see an everyman sort of medical focused character. But anyway, that's enough rambling about that. Let's move on. Next, from Lyle SY, we have tigers that have been added to the game. Oh joy. It specifically references the zoo. Every time I've ever seen someone bring up tigers, what usually happens is that like 10 people will say, oh, well, in America, there are more tigers in private owned homes than there are in actual caged enclosures, that sort of thing. Which then we roll our eyes at and say, okay, so you want to add tigers to the game as pets? That's a little bit ridiculous, even if that is a true statistic. It doesn't really fit. This specifically adds them to zoos, which is where they should be. Oh, good, and they quoted Tiger King. Excellent. Definitely a great way to make yourself likable is to associate with the Tiger King. But I don't have a problem with this. Them spawning in zoos and in captivity makes a lot of sense. because we do have zoos in the game. They do contain a pretty lackluster number of animals at the moment because there just aren't that many that have been added to the game. Like, I don't think there are large apes or gorillas or anything that you... Oh, in fact, it says right here, lions, elephants, large apes, monkeys, penguins, these things are already pretty absent from the game, so our zoos are a bit lackluster. So in that context, I think a tiger makes perfect sense. Addition to that, there seems to be... Oh no, that's not a zombie variant. Sorry, I thought it added a zombie variant as well. This is actually a reference to the cougar, and it's based off of the cougar, but bigger and slower. Oh, there is a zombie variant, sorry about that, and it only spawns as a result of this creature dying. So yeah, pretty cool. We definitely want more zombie animals in the game, and it makes sense to add a zombie variant when you would add the standard animal, and it also makes sense that it should only show up when one of them dies. That way we're not just spawning random zombie tigers in the apocalypse, so that is something to look at in the future as well. And I don't have much more to say about that. I think it's interesting. More animals in the game, especially in the context of a zoo, is very good. So I don't want to show you this full PR, but the next PR is from, I believe, Nexus Mr. Sepp, and it specifically targets skill-based achievements. It adds quite a lot of them to the game, and here we can see some of their names. Now, I don't know if it displays the achievement in the game as telling you what you need to meet. That's why I'm not showing it, just in case people don't want spoilers on how to get achievements, but they are tied to your skill levels, and there are quite a lot of them. So just something else to be working towards in your free time, and it will be nice when they just pop up. Again, I don't know, like here we have Master Chef. Pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory, but there are some achievements in the game that don't show you their criteria, so I didn't want to show you the actual values required. Obviously, Master Chef would be connected to your cooking skill, but what skill level is required, we're going to leave that a mystery for now. But I love that they're adding more achievements. Achievements are one of the cooler new features that I think really need to be continually expanded and will give people a lot of... I mean, for me personally, once there are quite a lot of achievements in the game, I'm going to definitely do at least one run where I try to get as many achievements as humanly possible, if not all of them, if that is something that's actually doable or not. So I really like achievements, and we've talked about that when they were first implemented. I talked at length about why I think achievements are good in games. And so we don't need to rehash that, but I just wanted to add that skill-based achievements have been added to the game. Next, also from Lyle SY, this is the person who we just discussed adding the tigers. In fact, I messed up. I was supposed to put the tiger and all the other animal stuff together, so my mistake. But yes, Lyle SY has added a new monster to the game called Massive Zombie Spiders, which, spoiler alert, it's a bunch of zombie spiders. This is... You know, I've been really liking the animal zombie changes that have been coming to the game and stuff. I don't like this one. I don't think this one really fits. So basically what it is a... If you ever played Angband, when I grew up, I played a lot of Angband. There were like worm masses and things like that. And it's kind of that classic like Rat King style concept. Like it's one mass that functions as a singular entity. And I don't know how I feel about it. It's just because spiders, it doesn't really make sense to me that a mass of spiders would move and function as a singular being. And my understanding is that the point behind this is because spiders are too small to have the zombie infection. And so the general thought is that if they mass together, they could function using all that biomass as a singular entity. I just don't like that. I don't think it fits for spiders. If you had told me I added, he added a giant mass of writhing worms to the game, or rats that have been tangled together by their tails, things like that, I think this would be perfectly fine and I would be okay with it. I don't know from a lore perspective that makes sense, but from like my just take on creatures in the game that would be entangled or functioning kind of as a hive mind, I just don't see that with spiders. And someone pointed out in the comments that basically if it was, and one, it's 23 kilograms of spiders, by the way, an enormous requirement depending on how large the spiders are. But someone down here had pointed out that, well, one, they pointed out there's really no reason that they would become entangled like that, which is kind of, in my immediate thought was like, why would they be stuck together? And then someone else here pointed out that thousands of small spiders would be effectively immune to damage, which is absolutely true. It would not die from a singular blow or something the way another creature would die, because the amount of damage you would have to deal would have to be to so many small individual parts that it just is not really feasible. So I think from a realism perspective and from like the zombie perspective, it just doesn't really make sense to me. I'll let you be the judge on whether this is a good change or not. I'm not saying it's a bad change, I just don't really like it very much. So, yeah, expect to find little mounds of spiders in the game. I don't know what their capabilities are. I didn't even look at the monster entry. Looks like they have very low HP, are relatively slow. Nothing really impressive in their melee abilities. Looks like they're basically just a flavor enemy. They're not really something to be super scared of or super, is going to be a real danger to you unless they spawn in large clusters, which I would doubt that they would. I'd imagine they'd spawn 1 to 3 at a time. So really not much to report here, just a little bit more flavor, a little bit more diversity to the game. Let's move on to the next animal section, which is much more interesting in my opinion, or a much better change in my opinion. And this is to add additional upgrade paths for zombie dogs and wolves. Previously we did have a zombie wolf in the game. I think that's the only zombie canine other than, like, that's the only non-dog zombie canine. We obviously have a lot of zombie dogs, skeletal dogs, and things like that running around in the game. And this adds some evolutions for them, including, I believe it references upgrading into a skeletal Hulk, for instance, or brute versions and Hulk versions of these canines. Pretty scary stuff when you think about how fast a zombie dog generally is and how much. So my issue with zombie dogs is that they are generally a small size, so they are much harder to hit with firearms and with melee than you would get when you're trying to attack a human zombie. So zombie dogs already are kind of obnoxious. They tend to break away from the pack. They follow you pretty well. They close ground with you very quickly. They can be difficult to shoot. Skeletal dogs in particular don't really respond well to being shot. And so I'm a little concerned that they're going to be really, really difficult. I imagine that they toned down the speed considerably on these upgrades so that they were a little bit less, not great. Oh, this is just a skeletal dog. Where is, okay, zombie brute dog, for instance. HP. Oh, they added the ability to just scale up zombies. I did not know that. That's interesting. But it looks like it has about 1.5 times their hit point, 1.5 times their speed. The fact that their speed goes up is a bit crazy to me, because dogs are already quite fast, some of them. So I don't love that. I'm a little concerned about how dangerous these things will be, especially since they get the smash attacks and things like that. So this is definitely one I need to play with to really give a response on how dangerous they are. I also don't know how common they are or how quickly they upgrade. I did not see that in here. Half-Life 15, Half-Life 21 to the Hulks. So several weeks into the game, most likely you'll see them as early as maybe like I don't know, 10-ish. It all depends on what you got your scaling set to. But pretty early for the brutes, and then the Hulks should be about a month out, I would imagine. So not exactly something you're going to bump into on week 1, but still definitely something to be aware of. I think these are going to be extremely dangerous based on the little bit that I've seen here already. So I'm a little concerned, but I think that more zombie animals is really great. We were talking about that in the last episode. I think that zombie... I got a shout out. I think that zombie animals in general are good for diversity. And I like that them getting more expansive evolutions is something I'm interested in. I was actually listening to Critical Role last night, and they were in a sewer, and they had a miniature rat replaced with a miniature dog, and they were exploding into these gases. And it made me think, wouldn't it be interesting to add a zombie dog gas bag, like the gas bags we already have in the game, but it's functionally a dog, so it would be very fast and be able to close ground very quickly with you, but then just kamikaze and explode and poison your character. And I thought, that's a really interesting, idea for an upgrade based on something that's already implemented in the game. So I really like the idea of dogs getting more expanded kind of evolutionary standpoints. I do think that as they upgrade, they should no longer be considered small or get the tags that let them, be more evasive, hard to shoot. I do think the higher tier dogs should not have those abilities. But other than that, I think that I like that dogs are getting more love. And I'm excited to see these guys in action and see if they're appropriately balanced or if there's something to be really terrified of. Either way, pretty interesting. Didn't mean to ramble about it, but let's move on. Next, from another simulacrum, we have the ability to allow a randomizing scenario and profession. So we already had this function from the main menu. You could select a random character from the option menu and it would let you randomize those things initially. But once you were in the character menu, there was no way to randomize them from there. So previously we had this option. We could go to random character and we would select our world and it would generate for us a random scenario and random profession. However, this is not very versatile. A lot of times you would get in, it wouldn't be something that you're interested in playing right at this moment, and you would have to back out to the main menu to make that change. Now we can just go to the scenario tab and hit the asterisk button, and it will randomly select a scenario for us. This is really nice, so I don't have to back out to the main menu constantly. It doesn't appear to be listed anywhere. I don't see any area that says press asterisk to change your scenario, randomize your scenario. Similarly, we can do the same thing with profession, albeit it will be limited to those that are available to the scenario you choose. You can go to helicopter crash. There are quite a few here. We'll just hit asterisk for a while and bam, I'm a bionic agent. So pretty small change as far as like impact on gameplay. But I know that for me personally, I remember when the initial change came, where we could randomize, what was it we were able to randomize? We could randomize something else, and I thought, why don't we have that for scenario and profession? And now we do. So I thought that was a nice little change, so I thought I would throw that out there. Next, from John Candlebury, we had some changes to the third mission of Hub 01. If you are not familiar with Hub 01, I did just do a kind of tutorial style series where we talked about the NPC faction and the missions they had available. And I literally just made an episode on the third mission of the hub. So I'm a little disappointed to see this change because now I have to go back and re-record my my whole video. So that's a bummer. But from a game perspective, this is a cool change. It just fleshes that out a little bit more. Haha, flesh, because there are now flesh-colored covered walls and floors in the basement, as well as some more themed monsters. And I'll be looking at those in an episode probably in the near future so I can revisit the one I've already made, where we'll dive deeper into what these creatures are and what they do to us. But yeah, this change exists. If that's something you're interested in, check out the PR. Links, of course, in the description down below. Don't have much to say about it. Haven't looked at it in detail just yet, but I thought I would shout it out for those of you who might be going off of the guide or have already played the third mission and are now going to be possibly unpleasantly surprised to see that things have changed and might be more dangerous. Next, from WAP Caplet, we got dry cat and dog foods added to the game. It makes sense that they were. We have wet dog food, of course, cat food, of course, and now we have dry and cat and dog food, which will spawn in a 6-liter plastic bag. Has a 90-day shelf life. I'm not 100%. I'm sure they probably did their research, and that's how long it would last in real life. But I kind of thought, dry food kind of had a really long shelf life, and I guess that might not be true. But regardless, this also will function as food for taming purposes. So if you find wet, dry, whatever kind of pet food, you can just feed it to the animals. I imagine this makes an appearance in the pet shops that we've been seeing pretty frequently in my games anyway. So yeah, I thought it was a neat little change. Thought I'd shout it out. Next, also from Nexus Mr. Sepp, we have workout and exercise. So, for a long time, there's been exercise equipment in the game, and it had no functional purpose. Now, you can actually interact with some of it, and you can train your character, essentially. Now, before you get too excited, this does not have an impact on your stats. This is something people always ask is, why can't I level up my strength by working out? Currently, this is just to increase your calorie consumption. So those of us that eat a little bit too much and need to lose a few pounds, this allows us to burn calories while just kind of hanging out in our base. What's interesting is that this might be the groundwork for allowing eventual skill raise or stamina increases from working out, things like that. Worst case scenario, it gives a purpose for that furniture now, which I really like. I like that. Because a ton of the furniture you find in the game has no purpose whatsoever. I remember finding a lathe like 6 months ago and thinking, oh, they're going to add lathes to the game. And we still can't use a lathe. And it's been, months. And the weightlifting equipment has been around for a really long time, so it's nice to see that get a purpose. I would love to see more of the furniture. I've seen drill presses and planers and things like that. I would love to see that stuff get more functionality. But anyway, you can just work out now, which is pretty straightforward and not super relevant at the moment unless you're trying to burn calories. I don't know that that needs a guide on its own or anything, so I doubt I'll be making a video about it. But hey, it exists, and feel free to check out the PR in the description down below. Next, from Mark, we got ground vehicle Z level transitions and bridges have been moved up a Z level. So you may have already seen this. There's been some wonkiness with the behavior of bridges, but now when you approach a bridge, you will see kind of like a concrete wall, and you will see symbols for ramps. And as you drive your vehicle over them, it should transition you up a level onto the bridge. This is good for a whole lot of reasons. One, Z-level transitions for vehicles is actually like really cool and something that is exciting to see added to the game. They obviously had that for helicopters, but now it's been expanded to ground vehicle. I mean, I don't know that there's any overlap. It might be completely different code, but it's cool to see that it's been added to the game. And that is one aspect of it, is just making a cool thing for us to be able to transition from Z levels. But more importantly, this allows us to now traverse underneath of a bridge. So previously, if you were in a boat and you were trying to cross a waterway and there was a bridge in your way, there was literally nothing you could do about that. You would have to either remove your boat from the water and walk around or whatever. You could not go under the bridge. And so this now, after raising the bridges up a Z level, you can now transition cleanly underneath the bridge and go through the waterway. So that's a pretty cool addition. I think that that's pretty interesting. It says it does weird things if Z levels are not enabled. I believe the option for Z levels has been removed, so they are now on by default and there's no way to turn them off in the menus. So that is something that I'm not sure who did that or when I saw that. I might not even be right about that, but I'm pretty sure Z levels are now permanently on. So yeah, get used to that, I guess. Hopefully you're not running this on a toaster. That could cause some issues, but they're very stable at this point, and I would recommend you play with Z levels anyway. And yeah, I've seen some wonky behavior, people pointing out that they found floating bridges or just concrete walls in the way of where the ramps should be. I've not experienced any of those issues myself. I don't know what's causing them. If you have that issue, make a bug report. Don't just complain on Discord. Go on GitHub and make a bug report so they can actually, improve the game. But other than that, yeah, I think it's really cool. I don't usually do aquatic vehicles, but now that this is implemented, I might just do that because we can now we don't have to make it amphibious. We could live entirely on our boat, which is pretty cool. We don't need to make a vehicle that can transition between land and water. And it's just a neat change. So pretty cool. Wanted to mention that. And then finally from Gouldane, we have redesigned the land prison. Now I'm not going to scroll down on this one either because I'm personally interested in playing the new prison. But basically my understanding of this is that the old prison was kind of obsoleted. So if you haven't played the old version of the prison, you essentially had to get to the ground floor, find your way to the exit, use the small amount of light that would come through like the visitor center or whatever, craft yourself a crowbar, makeshift crowbar, and then break your way out the front door. After the prying changes and some other things that have been changed in the game, this wasn't really viable or really doable at all anymore. This person specifically references like the only way out was to craft like the home wrecker, which if I recall correctly is not a very easy thing to craft, and then break your way out, which is pretty narrow. Like it's very narrow in that it requires you to do one of like two things in order to escape. And so this person has taken the time to redesign the prison. To my understanding, I tried not to look at it because I was interested in playing it pretty soon-ish for my YouTube channel, but I haven't looked at it, so I don't know exact specifics, but to my understanding, it's much more realistic now. It's a little bit more of a real prison layout. There are towers and all kinds of stuff that function more like a real-world prison would. I think that's pretty cool. I'm pretty interested in checking this out, and I would encourage you to check out the prison scenario, because previously, like I said, there was a pretty narrow path to take in order to escape, and once you've done it, there's really not a lot of replayability there. It was pretty straightforward. I think I did it once. I succeeded on my first try. I just never went back. It's been years since I even saw one of those locations on the inside. I just don't go to them anymore. And this is, interesting because not only does it revitalize the initial scenario where you can start the game, but it also makes these places a little bit more appealing for later game characters who might want to explore them. So I think this is really cool. Again, I don't know a lot of the details, but the fact that someone took the time to redesign it, they based it on some real life prison stuff. I think that's really cool. The island prison is very fascinating for the same reason. And yeah, I just think this is a cool change, and I really wanted to shout it out. And I'll be honest, I think that is it for this episode of the Experimental Cataclysm. So thanks for popping in. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. If you did, maybe consider liking the video. Getting a lot of dislikes lately. Not sure what that's about, but hopefully you enjoyed the video enough to click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. But if not, that's perfectly fine as well. And I'll be back with another episode in about 2 weeks. So for now, thank you for watching. Hopefully you had a good time, and I'll see you in the next one.